Welcome into NBC Sports EDGE Brackets and Bets Tournament Preview. I'm Sara Perlman here, joined by Drew Dinsick, Corey Parson, and Vaughn Dalzell to get you ready for March Madness. We're going to get into our favorite picks, futures, upsets in round one. Ultimately, who will be cutting down the nets in April. Now, we witnessed a crazy season. Various teams shut down at different times with COVID-19. And it seems like the first time in forever, we're not going to see, true blue blood teams like Kentucky and Duke. They're not in the field of 68. And of course, this year, also different. All games will be played in the state of Indiana. Gentlemen, the 2021 men's NCAA tournament field is set. So let's start off by getting a look at the bracket and really looking at the one seed. And no surprise, I'm not even going to call it by the region, because there really are no regions this year. Where they're being played is all one and the same. So I'm going to start with Gonzaga. And, last week we kind of discussed how will the committee treat Gonzaga. I feel like they have a very nice route to success, but of course we're going to start here. And Vaughn, I'll start with you. When we look at this region, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, Gonzaga has the way to go to the Final Four. It is the easiest path of all the teams, and they deserve it. I mean, when you're undefeated, you deserve the easiest path as kids, but going through Oklahoma or Missouri, those are teams they can beat. Then you got Creighton, potentially Ohio, Virginia, these type of teams. I don't see them having a hard path to the Sweet 16 whatsoever. Once they get to the Elite Eight, I think that's when things start to get a little difficult with them. But I do find some interesting upset potential in this region, but I know we'll get to that a little bit later.
Oh, I'm going to circle back to that for sure. But Corey, in the meantime, you look at Gonzaga out of the West in this one seed in particular. What do you like about this region, and what are your initial thoughts here?
Well, if I'm a Gonzaga Bulldog supporter, which I am, I like this region a lot. Obviously, the NCAA tournament took things more or less kind of like how I said, this being the Gonzaga Invitational. When you look at even the top teams in this bracket, in this region right here, Gonzaga has already beat these teams throughout the course of the season. You got Virginia, you got Kansas in here. They've had their struggles, throughout the course of the season. Not Virginia and Kansas. So when you look at what Gonzaga Bulldogs have right now, they pretty much have the easy route to it. You have Virginia, who's dealt with some COVID issues. Also Kansas dealing with some COVID issues. So right now, outside of Iowa being down there on that 2 line, which Gonzaga has already beat this year, I think the Gonzaga Bulldogs are set up pretty good to make a run to the Final Four.
And of course, Drew, I got to get your thoughts on the one seed, and of course this region, the West region. What do you like? Any upsets? What do you think about Gonzaga's path now?
Yeah, in years past, we've seen the tournament committee not look kindly on Gonzaga. They're not one of the major, in one of the major conferences. They have, the committee has given them a tougher path. This year, for whatever reason, I feel like they have been gifted one of the most favorable draws I can remember. And it's interesting because in a normal year, you have, a college team that's undefeated coming into the tournament. Granted, these guys are tested. They've played some extremely competitive, some of the best teams across the country over the course of their season, and they've won comfortably and impressively, and are rightfully the number 1 seed overall, and rightfully the futures leader in the clubhouse right now. And looking around at prices, they're about -200 to win the West, and I think that's fair, maybe even value. I mean, there's really no one else in this entire bracket short of Kansas, who is dealing with, obviously is dealing with specific issues right this moment that I think can reasonably challenge them in a head-to-head. So really and truly, the West is Gonzaga's to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to your point, also Kansas dealing with a ton of COVID issues. We'll get into that later. Gonzaga, undefeated, number 1 overall seed, has a legitimate shot at the first perfect season since Indiana in 1975-76 season. Okay, heading on to the next region, let's take a look at Baylor. And of course, I got to start with you, Vaughn, because we've spent a lot of time talking about Baylor in the past. When you look at their region in particular, what do you like and what are your just initial thoughts on it?
Well, Baylor definitely has let me down lately. That loss to Oklahoma State wasn't ideal for someone that holds their ticket. But at the same time, I think that they're still one of the best teams in the country. I think I would take Gonzaga for sure, and then Illinois before I take Baylor as the best teams. But I think there's a lot of upset potential in this region for them. They could get a tough North Carolina team in that second matchup. North Carolina, I like them over Wisconsin if they can control the ball. Wisconsin doesn't turn the ball over, so that's the key to beating them. Forcing turnovers or playing a clean game yourself. For Villanova, I kind of look at them as they're pretty much done. Winthrop is one of the teams I like a lot in that matchup. But don't sleep on a Purdue, Texas Tech, Arkansas. These type of teams produce an interesting one because they are one of 6 teams ranked top 25 in offensive and defensive efficiency in the country. So don't sleep on them, but teams like those can catch Baylor. I think Baylor's going to have a very tough time making it to the Elite 8 or beyond that.
All right, and Mr. Drew Dinsick, your thoughts on Baylor. By the way, let me go on the record saying Purdue might be in my Final Four. I'll just say it now. Spoiler alert. We'll get into that later in the show. But Drew, what do you think about this region south here?
We're going to have an interesting conversation later about Purdue then. Overall, I think, again, Baylor is the best team in this section of the bracket, and I don't think it's close. Now, they have not looked the same since they've come back from their COVID, in their COVID hiatus, I guess I would call it. They haven't been quite as sharp. They haven't been quite as impressive just from a statistical standpoint, but they have exactly the type of team makeup that I really like backing in a college basketball tournament setting. And what I mean by that is, yes, they have great, adjusted offensive efficiency. Their defensive offensive efficiency is not great, but they play in the Big 12 against some absolute smoking offenses. So the fact that they give up a little bit of, a little bit easy baskets, not super concerned about that. But I love that they can force turnovers defensively at just an outstanding clip. Number 3 in the country right now. I love that they hit the 3-point shot. Most highest percentage of 3-point shot making team in the country. That's kind of the perfect recipe. You can create turnovers. You can hit your threes. That helps you stave off the upset in March, in my opinion. And so they gave them a tough path. Obviously, a matchup against Wisconsin and UNC just to get to the Sweet 16 is tough. And then, beyond that, I think there's going to be a little bit of chaos in their bracket, which may make their path a bit easier. But I do think, Baylor is going to be a factor when it comes down to who wins this title.
Okay, so we got Drew giving his early thoughts on Baylor. It seems like Vaughn's a little off them in the 1 seed. So Corey, I'll rely on you. What are your initial thoughts when you look at Baylor's region here and their path to the Elite 8 and beyond event?
I'll be honest with you, Sara, it's kind of a combination of both guys. And I like what Drew said about the ability to create turnovers and hit the 3. And you know how that works during the NCAA tournament time, because so many of these college basketball teams, if you haven't watched much college basketball this year, what you're going to see is mainly these teams just come up, heist the 3, do some crazy Euro step, throw the ball over the basket. But when you can play defense and create turnovers, it makes things very interesting. So Baylor is still the class of this. Is going to be interesting to see how they deal with the winner of that North Carolina and Wisconsin game. But when you get down to the bottom of this bracket, it gets real interesting. And that's where the chaos can come in as, like you said, Baylor hasn't been playing that well, coming down the stretch, and not really like the same team as they have earlier in the season. But down at the bottom of that bracket, you got teams like Ohio State that could be interesting. Arkansas coming out the SEC. So Baylor's going to have to get in there and mix it up. They're going to earn their trip to the Final Four, Sara, if they get there.
All right, let's take a look at the next region here. And I think we're all going to be in agreement. We like the 1 seed coming out of the Midwest with Illinois. Brad Underwood's team entering the Big Ten, 7-game winning streak, 5 victories over top 25 teams in the Big Ten. Not much to dislike about this Illinois team. Drew, I see you making faces. I feel like you like Illinois. Tell me why, if that's the reason, or fade everything I just said. You can.
No, I mean, I don't think you can really argue that the Big Ten was the toughest and most talented conference top to bottom in college basketball. And who won the Big Ten? Illinois. Who, coming down the stretch, was missing, their best player for meaningful chunks of their season? Illinois. Did they play well? Did they shrink in the moment? No, they stepped up. They were awesome in the absence of their key player. And sure enough, come into the Big Ten tournament, take care of business, get the win. I don't think you can reasonably say that there's any team in college basketball that's hotter than Illinois right now. The problem for them is this region is absolutely stacked.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, every kind of Cinderella or like kind of mid-major team that I had my eyes on, like, ooh man, like I got an awesome future down last week on Houston. I was like, man, Houston, this team, people are sleeping on them. They don't know how good Houston is, and sure enough, like Loyola Chicago, San Diego State, Houston, basically every good kind of quietly, better than the market thinks team ended up in this bracket. And so this, all of the can't watch basketball is in Illinois' bracket. It's going to be incredibly fun to see, how this region progresses, because it looks very chalky to me. Some of these other brackets you can see, okay, well, there's going to be a little bit of chaos here and there. The Midwest looks like you are going to get straight chalk. And to be honest, matchups like West Virginia, San Diego State, that is a coin flip. Matchups like Houston, West Virginia, Houston, San Diego State, that's a coin flip. And then you get to the likelihood of the region final being Houston, Illinois. That might be one of the best games we get in the entire tournament. Houston, I have right now rated as a top 3 team. And I really had hoped that they would get in the same bracket as a Baylor or as a Michigan, someone that they, reasonably were better than, that they could take on. But this is a very tough draw for Houston, which is, it's going to make, it's going to kind of level the playing field. And I'm sure, just kind of looking at the market, you saw the Houston number for the title come way in last week as people started to realize how good they were, and then come way back out as people digest how difficult this region is.
Yeah, Drew, I'm kind of with you. It seems like chalk might prevail, and we'll get into our best bets of round 1 later in the show. But for now, Vaughn, your thoughts on the Illini in this 1 seed in the Midwest region in general?
Yeah, like Drew said, if you're looking for chaos, this is definitely the side of the bracket to look for it. There are a ton of teams here that have been successful all season, and I'm kind of hurt and twisted because there are a lot of teams that I've rode with all season that are in this bracket, and now I'm going to have to fade some of them, and that's difficult because Illinois, as Drew said, hottest team in the country right now, arguably outside of Gonzaga. They are just destroying everybody in their path. If you haven't been betting on them, you haven't been winning enough money then. Loyola Chicago has been such a stellar team all year defensively. They get it done. When they shoot threes, watch out. They have a guy I'll talk about a little later. Oregon State, as we saw, someone just won $150,000 off a $150 bet on them to win the conference. Projected to finish last in the Pac-12. They have been rolling all season. They won the conference. San Diego State, West Virginia, as Drew said, these 2 teams, those are 2 teams I look at that I was thinking these are deep run teams, and now they get matched up potentially with a second-round matchup against each other. That's very unfortunate. I think there are a ton of great teams in this bracket, in this region specifically. To go deep, I think Illinois undoubtedly is the best team, has the best chance to go deep, but they're going to run into potentially Oklahoma State, West Virginia, San Diego State, Houston. They're going to have a path to go. And I think that they kind of got ripped off a little bit because Michigan got a lot easier path than Illinois. And I don't get it, but that's just my opinion.
We'll get into that in a second. But for now, the fantasy exec, Corey, what are you thinking? Illini, Loyola Chicago, quite a few good teams in there, West Virginia. What's on your mind?
Here's the thing. This is going to be a tough one right here for the Fighting Illini. Now, listen, in most college basketball seasons, the way Illinois is playing right now, they'd be one of the favorites to win this thing. And I mind you, they're number 1 seed, and they've been playing very well, obviously, battle-tested coming through that Big Ten season, which was, easily the best division in college basketball this year. But I got my trusty bracket right here. And when you look at this bracket, Loyola Chicago is a team that everybody likes. Georgia Tech just ended up winning the ACC. You got Oklahoma State. Even Liberty is a team that can go on and run and get hot. San Diego State, who people love, coming out, this year. Also, West Virginia, another tough, battle-tested, well-fought team. And then you got the high-flying Houston Cougars down at the bottom of this bracket. If Illinois can make it out of this bracket, it'll be a very good look for them in the future of their program. But this is going to be very tough right here. This is tough sledding. So going to be interesting to see what Illinois does with this bracket. But they definitely are in tough spots. And this is my bracket right here, y'all. You know what I mean? This is going to be going on the refrigerator after this program. So everybody can gawk at it.
All right, send me a picture of that later. I'd like to copy it for the one I'm putting money on, Corey. I like what you're saying. Okay, Vaughn, let's go to the region that you just talked about, the East with Michigan, kind of saying they have an easier route than maybe the Illini. So tell me what you're thinking when you look at this region. What stands out? Who is competing against Michigan? Who else do you like there?
All right, first off, don't sleep on the underdogs in this region. LSU and St Bonaventure are 2 very good teams. It's unfortunate they got matched up against each other. I was really looking at St. Bonnie's to make a run. They are just offensively a great team. They have a bunch of guys that play solid minutes. They all scored 10 or more points. LSU, as you saw, is a very athletic team. They gave Alabama a run for their money, and they got scorers out the wazoo down there at LSU. So I like them to contend with Michigan here. I think Michigan is going to get knocked off at some point early. Whether who it is going to be difficult to say now because of who can win, but you look at teams, Florida State kind of slipped there at the end of the season, still a very solid team all around. Georgetown, oh my gosh, did they get hot out of nowhere? They won the Big East and now they're in there. That's a team that I like them over Colorado in the first round. I'm going to take Georgetown to cover that spread. We'll talk about that later. But there's the bottom region is what I look at as the most important aspect of this region. I think that the winner of this region will be coming out of the bottom half. I like the Texas Longhorns a lot. What they have done this season has been stellar all around. They've been in every game. They play in the Big 12, so they play the best of the best consistently. They have a great starting lineup and a bench that comes in, and they're all athletic big men too. And they got Andrew Jones, who is my guy, coming back from cancer a little bit over a year ago. He's been amazing all season long, and they have a great head coach. So I look at Texas to make it out the bottom. I like Alabama's chances. I hope they get matched up in a Sweet 16 for everybody watching. And but don't sleep on the Uconn Huskies as well. I grabbed them at 850 2 weeks ago to make the Final Four. I don't really see it happening now, unfortunately, but look out for them to make a run at least to the Sweet 16 potentially.
All right, Corey, let me go back to you. I'm loving Alabama. I love Texas to come out of this region. I'll tell you now. Corey, what do you think about Michigan's chances here in the East?
You see this X right here? This X is where Michigan is going to leave. Michigan is going to be the team that ends up getting knocked out as the 1 seed, and it could happen very early on in the bracket. Listen, Vaughn just did a great job of running through all the good, strong teams in this bracket. Michigan's play has come down. And one thing I've noticed about Michigan so far this season, when they get into a tough spot, they don't play as well as they do. They take advantage and they get fat on teams that they're better than. When they got to go up against a team with the same skill level of them, you see where their depth is not good enough to hang sometimes. So you got Florida State, my man, Leonard Hamilton, the best coach in the history of Florida State, in the history of the Florida State program. Texas, which Vaughn touched on, getting very hot right now. A lot of people are looking at Texas as a trendy pick to come out of here. But I'm going to go down at the bottom of this bracket. We can get a matchup in the round of 32 with UConn versus Alabama. That's going to be a goodie right there. Get your popcorn ready for that one, Sara. So I am looking at the Michigan Wolverines and Juwan Howard's crew as a bunch that's in trouble right now.
All right, and finally, Drew, tell me what you think about the East. I see you looking hard there. I know you've already made some bets, but just overall looking at this last region.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo the sentiment of our team here that of the 1 seeds, the only one that I really feel comfortable taking on that I doubt that they win their region is Michigan. And it doesn't really come down to who they're matched up against, because this is probably the weakest bracket. I guess, outside, if you take Gonzaga out of the West, that one is clearly the weakest, but Gonzaga's a truck. Otherwise, this region I don't think has a ton of strength beyond Michigan, and there's a lot of contenders. Alabama is a contender, sure. UConn is a contender. Actually, UConn probably would be, I would guess, a 4 seed if they had been healthy for the full season. They're an exceptionally good team, and they are currently at about 100%. So they're absolutely live in my opinion, to come out of the bottom half there. As Vaughn mentioned, Texas is the real deal. You have Michigan State likely to make a little bit of noise here. They could, I can entirely see Michigan State being able to get by UCLA, BYU, and then they match up pretty favorably against Texas as well. And then in the top, I think Florida State and Colorado, those are 2 teams that not a lot of people are buzzing about. They've lost a lot of games this season, obviously, but their metrics are pretty strong. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if, Michigan's going to have a tough test against the winner of that LSU Bonnies matchup. And then they're going to have a tough test against the winner of that Florida State Colorado matchup. And then they're going to have a tough test of whoever comes out of that bottom. So when I look at Michigan and, why are they, fair to take them on? They really struggle to create turnovers. They play at a very slow pace. If they're down in a game and they're not 100%, they're missing Isaiah Livers, probably out for a couple of weeks here with the stress fracture in his foot. It's going to be tough for them to come back from deficit if they catch one of these teams on a hot shooting night. And it's not totally wise to doubt the Big Ten, I suppose, but just in a general kind of macro sense, I do think the market is overrating the Big Ten compared to some of these other conferences. So I'm fine taking on Michigan in this region.
All right, still more to come. We're going to have best future bets, best picks in the first round, ATS, of course, Cinderellas, Giant Killer, so much more coming up. Okay, even if your brackets bust, your bets do not have to. Get an edge with our premium betting tools that are packed with live odds, betting trends, predictions, player prop projections, our extensive edge finder, much more. Use the promo code now, Madness10. Get 10% off any subscription. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/premium to learn more. We'll be right back.
Don't leave money on the table, no matter your sport. The Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
All right, guys, we broke down kind of what we made of each region, the favorites, their path to move on to the round of 32 and so on. But now this is where it gets interesting. There's always those teams that you look at that make a run and upset some teams and do better than expected. We see it every single year. So, Drew, I'm going to go to you here. I need a Cinderella team here, one you're looking at to make some noise, and now they're on the national stage to do so and surprise some people.
Well, there's two that really stand out to me. And, when you're looking for a Cinderella, the first thing you like to look for is who is underseeded, right? Like who's a team that should be a 10 or, a 9 maybe, but they got slotted as a 12 or a 13. And for me, that team is North Texas. They're going up against your Purdue Boilermakers, but this team is loaded with experience. They have 4 starting seniors and a junior. Their sixth man is a senior. This team played, completely anonymously. No one really saw them play much this year. My metrics have them pretty clearly in the top half of the tournament field, and yet they're a 13 seed. Purdue, I do think we saw them leaking a little bit of oil as they came down the stretch. This is a decent matchup because North Texas, you want some experience with your Cinderella. You want a team that's been playing together for years that can kind of create a little bit of magic. And I think North Texas absolutely has that recipe. The other one that clearly stuck out to me is Grand Canyon. Mm-hmm. They got seeded as a 15. I would have absolutely expected a 14 or a 13 from these guys. And then, oh, by the way, they match them up against the Iowa Hawkeyes, one of the bigger frauds in the field, in my opinion. I do not see the Iowa Hawkeyes as a 2 seed. And Grand Canyon, I think is, I don't know that they pull off an upset here, but absolutely like the points against the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of money, I'm assuming, as we coming in on these underdogs and the spread's open too big. It's happened so far with other teams we'll get into. But now, moving off of Cinderella picks, the Giant Killers. And Vaughn, I've been waiting to hear your thoughts on this for quite some time. I need to know which teams are going to threaten these top dogs, these 1 seeds in the bracket here.
So there are 4 teams in particular that I like and I circled. I took all these teams against the spread last night when the odds came out on PointsBet, but mind you, these are all small schools. Some have experience in the big dance, but I think that they can get the job done. So one is, a stat I'll give out is, a number 13 seeds, they have beaten a number 4 seed in 25 of the last 35 tournaments. So I look at that and who's going to be that 13 seed that upsets the 4 seed. I think it could be the Ohio Bobcats over Virginia. Now, Virginia got hit with the COVID problem where they were on a 3-game winning streak that kind of put them on a hiatus, but they were 3-3 in their last 6 games. They lost to Miami, Louisville, and Syracuse. 2 of those 3 teams aren't even in the field. I have not been on high on Virginia all season. I feel like they've been overrated. Ohio has a bunch of talented players, but they're mostly led by Jason Preston, who's their guard. He does everything, over 7 rebounds and 7 assists per game, and he gets buckets. So I like Ohio there to cover that spread. I think that's an upset potential. And if they get by in that game, I mean, they're going to face either Creighton. Most likely they'll face Creighton. But if they get past that, it's going to be Gonzaga, and we already know what's going to happen there. On the other side of the bracket, this team is 23-1, so Winthrop. Mm-hmm. I saw a lot of people talking about the Eagles over Villanova, and I like this one. Winthrop only lost 1 game all season, tied with Colgate for the 2nd-best record in all of college basketball, trailing Gonzaga. The Eagles have a lot of offense. They shoot threes particularly, and when they hit from 3, they are dangerous. But they have one guy I want to give a shout-out to, Chandler Valdron. I know his younger brother Chase from when I used to call basketball games at Geneva College. Didn't know when I met him that he played for Winthrop. 3 years later, he's in March Madness tournament for the big upset potential against Villanova, who they lost 2 of their best players. They're basically leaning a lot on James Robinson Earl right now. So I like Winthrop in this spot a lot to get it going. And one note I will make about Villanova, they rank 248th in the nation in 3-point defense, which is terrible. And guess what? This team hits the 3. Other than that, I like Oregon State. They've been rolling lately, as we all have seen. Tennessee is out John Fulkerson. A lot of limited depth there. They have a 6-man rotation mainly, so Oregon State could make a run. Why not fade this? Don't fade this Beavers team just yet. And then Georgia Tech is another one. If they survive Loyola Chicago, you can't really fade Tech right now either. They are rolling in all facets, and they've won 8 straight games, I believe, to get to the ACC tournament and win it. So I like those 4 teams on the spreads, and I think that they're all upset potential and can win a game or 2 in the tournament.
Yeah, I love everything you said there, Vaughn. Winthrop, 23-1, as you mentioned. They breezed through the Big South this season. Yeah. And then Virginia, I don't know. We're going to get into some COVID talk later, but they're not even traveling to Indianapolis until Friday because most of the players are still out in quarantining until Thursday. So that might play an effect, and we'll get into that in a bit. But for now, Corey, everyone loves the 5 versus 12s. There's upset potential across the board. Point spreads might not be big enough. This is always fun for your brackets, betting, and so much more. So, Corey, you look at these matchups, in particular 5 versus 12s. Who do you like here? Which teams stand out in these matchups?
Well, let me jump into a couple things right quick. First of all, to harken back to Drew with that pick on North Texas. North Texas is a team that I do like. And North Texas, Mean Green, yes, they are actually named after their most famous alumni, Mean Joe Green. And Drew was talking about, and Vaughn was talking about the 13s versus the 4s. Interesting that he mentioned that. Doing my research this morning, using our Edge premium tools, I also picked up on that trend as well. So that's going to be interesting. But these 5 versus 12, Sara, here's the thing. This is what it comes down to. One of my betting rules is I like to fade trendy underdogs. And all of these 12 seeds this year are going to be trendy underdogs. Now, particularly when you look at Winthrop, as Vaughn mentioned, Winthrop going up against Villanova. Villanova struggling right now with the injuries. Winthrop is a very good tournament team. They come in there hot. Only on one loss on the season. Oregon State, another team that's coming in hot. Listen, this Tennessee team was a team that people had, to make a Final Four run earlier in the year. When you look at Oregon State, it's interesting. But what I will say is this. A trendy underdog I am not going to back is going to be the Georgetown Hoyas going up against the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado top 25 defensive unit. They're excellent against defending the 3-pointer, 17 and 13 ATS on the season. So Georgetown opened up as a 6-point dog. The numbers already dropped to a 5.5-point dog. A lot of people coming in, public bettors giving that love to Patrick Ewing. So I'm going to stick with the Buffaloes on that one. And then also UC Santa Barbara. Now, this is an underdog that I do like. They are going to be trendy, but Creighton is in a ton of trouble right now. Creighton was a 8-point favorite in the Big East Championship. And they got smoked, you know what I'm saying? So that's absolutely crazy right there. Creighton's a lot going on inside that locker room right now. And I look at this UC Santa Barbara team. You know what? They are a veteran-laden team. They play very good on defense. So I will take Santa Barbara plus a 6.5. You're probably going to need to get that number right now with the Gauchos because that one's going to be falling. I think we got a live dog in UC Santa Barbara.
Corey, I'm with you. They've had a ton of issues within their locker room and, of course, on the court. To your point, Creighton opened as 8-point favorites, and right away we saw that line get adjusted very quickly. Money came in, odds makers quickly moved that to your point, 6.5, and we'll see where that ends up landing. Okay. If you don't bet, maybe you do, and you don't do as many brackets. We need a player to watch. Like for me, I love watching guys that are either getting drafted highly or on the big stage for the first time. So, Drew, I'll start with you here. Give me a player to watch throughout March Madness.
So I'm going to look for solid production, solid veteran leadership from Houston's Quentin Grimes. This is a player that I feel like is pretty clearly in the top 5 among all college basketball players in this tournament. Houston, again, is a team that overall metrically, I find them to be a very realistic title threat. Even, they're not getting a lot of buzz and even the market moving against them to a degree. But Quentin Grimes is his third season, third year in the tournament. Actually, I guess, last year there was no tournament, but third year being sort of a leader on this team. And his statistical, profile is exactly the type of profile you want for a team leader at the guard position. In general, veteran guards tend to be a massively important component in terms of success in the tournament. And Houston's got a nice little soft landing here with their first 2 games that they basically got a bye to the Sweet 16, and then they're going to have some tough contests, and it's going to be his play that is going to distinguish them against the outstanding defense that San Diego State brings, and his offense that's going to be able to carry them against the likes of the Illini if they meet them in the Elite Eight. So keep an eye on Grimes. I think if Houston does anything in this tournament, he's somebody that I have my eye on as player of the tournament.
Okay, Houston Grimes, Corey, fantasy exec, who are we looking out for?
I'm going to focus on a guy that, people kind of forgot about, because, of his play, to be honest with you, Javon Quinterly came to Villanova, his original team, as a top blue chip prospect. I'm sure Vaughn knows this. And it didn't work. It was a bad fit in Villanova. Went to Alabama, sat out the year, and now he is absolutely balling. Javon is a bucket, JQ, Jelly Fam, you know what I'm saying? So I like the way his game is going right now. You see him win the SEC player of the tournament, averaging 15 points in this tournament. Drew spoke about how this tournament can be really run and taken over by a guard. We've seen guards take over this tournament before. Kemba Walker, Steph Curry, just to name a few. So Javon Quinterly, I like the fact that he said we still got work to do. You're talking about a young man playing with a chip on his shoulder right now. He didn't like the way that things at Villanova went down. He's one of the best players in college basketball, and I think he's going to put on the show in this tournament.
All right, Vaughn. Let's finish this off with the player you're looking forward to watching. Who should we look out for?
Yeah, I love both of those players you guys mentioned. Alabama, oh my God, they're both just fantastic scorers. I was watching both of them yesterday, actually, because they both play in the conference championships, and they were just phenomenal scorers, so quick. They got to the basket, so I'm a fan of both of them. As you said, guards and March are really what make these teams run for the most part. So I have 2 guards to watch out for and then 1 big man. But for the guards, I love Andrew Jones. I mentioned him earlier. This guy's been stellar all year. He's such a leader for this team. He's averaged 14 points per game in the last 4.9 rebounds and assists per game against top 25 teams. He steps his game up, averaging almost 18 points, rebounds, and assists per game. But when he scores double digits, Texas is 17-4 this season. That's a big thing. And when he makes 3 or more 3-pointers, they're 7-2. So when he got his offensive game going, they are a different team. And I look at him to make a difference for them, especially when I got them going deep in this tournament. And then another guy for Illinois that has been catching fire that everyone's talking about is Andre Carbello. If you didn't know who he was, he's the guy on the court that's getting buckets when Io and Kofi aren't. He scored 10 or more in 7 of 8 games for the Fighting Illini. And when he scores double digits, they're 10-3 this season straight up. He's been phenomenal lately. He's picked up their play. And I think it's fair to say now that they have a big 3, and that's dangerous because they have a tough road to make it deep in the tournament. But with him playing as stellar as he is lately, I think they'll be okay. And the big man to watch in all of college basketball, this is a small tier school, so you might be upset if I don't go Herb Jones or any of these big guys, but I like Cameron Krutwig. He makes Loyola Chicago Ramblers go. They're 10-6 in the past 2 years when he doubles. They lost 3 of those games in OT, so it shows you just how efficient he actually is, and he leads the team in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. He does it all. Big man for the Ramblers. If they go far, it'll be most likely because of him.
Yeah, and a lot of people I know like them to go far. Okay. Before we take a break, I need the best bets of the first round, right? It's time to make these bets via points bet, of course. So let's hear it. Vaughn, I'm going to go back to you and start with you here. Give me some best bets you like in the opening round.
All right. 2 things you need to know about the opening round first off. Teams favored by 5 or more points since 1996, so 25 years, have won 85% of the games.
Wow.
You have a team that's favored by 5 or more. You can look at them and feel confident with them at least winning the game. Not saying all of them, because there are some I think are going to fall. But I think that majority of that line is something safe to go with. And the favorites have won the opening round 75% of the times in the future. So I also look at that as well. If you're a favorite, obviously 3/4 of the time you're going to win. For opening bets, I quickly grabbed Winthrop at +6. It's +5.5 now. Last time I looked, I grabbed them to cover that spread. And I grabbed the money line +200 on Villanova. I think they get that one outright. And then the second bet I grabbed right away was Oregon State +7.5 against Tennessee. Like I said, John Fulkerson out for Tennessee. Their rotation was already a 7-man rotation. Now it's 6-man with limited depth heading into the tournament. If he's not a go, Oregon State is so hot right now that I will take them to cover almost what is a double-digit spread against a Tennessee team that's kind of been falling off lately. So those are 2 that I locked in right away that I think are underdogs that can get money line victories as well.
Drew, I know you've been running your numbers and have already placed multiple bets, so let's hear it. Lay it out. Best bets of the first round.
Well, the one that stood out pretty obviously, and the first bet I made was San Diego State -2. I ran the numbers on this and I made it -6. I literally had to do a double take. Like I must have missed something here. I must have miscalculated something here. But no, San Diego State is the real deal. This is a top 15 team pretty clearly in this field. They got underseeded as a 6. And they have matchup advantages at every position, as far as I could tell you, against Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is obviously has a history of making a little noise. They're a well-supported team, so maybe that's some of the reason that the market is where it is on this one. But for me, San Diego State was the easy first one to choose. I mentioned a couple other in the Cinderellas that I think are worth backing. I could not make a bet quickly enough on North Texas with the points. I saw 7.5. I snapped that up. I think that continues moving in the direction of 7, probably closes 7 or 6.5. And similarly, I think Grand Canyon with the points against Iowa. 15 is way too many. The Iowa defense is so suspect. And realistically, they get a pass because they play in the Big Ten. And so people are like, well, yeah, they're playing great offenses. Of course, they give up a lot of points. But just from a raw numbers standpoint, this is a team that, has a very difficult time defending the hoop and, gives up a lot of open three-pointers. Grand Canyon can pick on that, and I think they're in that game. So I like the points with Grand Canyon. I like the points with North Texas, and I laid the points with the San Diego State Aztecs.
All right, Corey, you're last here. Best bets. First round starting Thursday and Friday.
I tell you what, Drew kind of stole my thunder on that San Diego State. That San Diego State number opened up at 2. By the time I turned around and looked back at the computer, it was -3. So the Sharps hopped all over that one, and I think that number will continue to push up. It's going to be interesting to see how the market treats the Mountain West champion. I don't even know if Syracuse should be in the tournament this year. And then here's an interesting one right here. Clemson and Rutgers. So we're talking about Clemson and Rutgers down here in the Midwest in this 7-10. Now, Clemson is the 17th seed. Rutgers is the 10 seed. Rutgers opens up as the favorite. So now the public is not going to know what to do with this game. So immediately you see the Sharps hop on it, open up at about a pick. Now the number's moved up to -1, seeing -2 in some shops. I think as we get closer to game time, the public will come in, obviously with sports. Listen, we haven't had an NCAA tournament with this many states having legal sports betting. So now we got all these states coming in here. You got all these new bettors. They see that 10 seed coming in as 7 seed coming in as the underdog. Public bettors are going to hop on that. I think might be able to even get a better number right now with Rutgers. So I'm going to look at the Rutgers Scarlet Knight. I think you can go ahead and money line that game right here. So I do like that one right there. So that's where I am at. I was curious to know what the guys thought about that Rutgers and Clemson game down there in that 7-10 matchup in the Midwest region.
I mean, Clemson stinks, so I'm with you.
I love it. I live in Jersey, so everybody's been talking about Rutgers and going crazy that they finally made it and they're back and everything. Ron Harper in the game. I think that was a surprising one to me because when I saw that matchup, I went right to Rutgers right away. I was like, I think that they got a better matchup, and I haven't been a fan of this Clemson team, even though they finished the regular season pretty strong. I mean, you saw what happened against Miami. If you're losing to Miami, I mean, you're not beating many teams in the March Madness, in my opinion. But there's a couple other teams that I did want to hit on. I did grab Rutgers as well. I grabbed them on the money line. 2 other teams I grabbed on the money line: San Diego State, make it a sweep for the team. I love it. And I grabbed UConn against Maryland. I think they match up very well defensively. I think UConn has the edge in that game. I said a stat about Purdue earlier. Top 25 teams that average top 25 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. UConn is one of those 6 teams as well. So match up with Maryland. I like them there. North Carolina, I hit on earlier what the turnovers with Wisconsin. I think North Carolina wins that game if they play a soft game. And 2 big spreads I like just to hit on quickly are both in the Big 12, of course. Baylor -26 against Hartford. Some people might be scared of that spread. Let's be honest. I think Baylor wins that game by 30+. It's if they lay off the gas tank at the end on Gonzaga style of play. But I think Texas -9 also is a very safe play against Alpine Christian. They lost by 13 to Arkansas and 7 to Texas Tech. Texas Tech only scored 51 points on that team. Texas is scoring way more than 51 points on this team. So I like Texas by double digits in that one. So I backed them on the -9 spread as well. But those are some other games I sprinkled in as well last night when all the odds came in.
Yeah, and when the games really start to take off, of course, you can find this and much more on NBC Sports Edge to see where they're kind of laying the points. To really recap very quickly here, Winthrop laying the points, Oregon State +7.5. I feel like everyone kind of likes Rutgers as well as San Diego State. Some North Texas +7.5 and Grand Canyon with a big 15 points there. Okay, a lot more to get to. Teddy Greenstein, editor with PointsBet's going to talk about the liabilities within the book. We're going to talk about our final 4 picks, the champion, a few more bets along the way. It's dancing time. Not only do we have exclusive betting tools, but we also now have college hoops, DFS tools too. Use our optimizer to give you an edge when building your lineups for FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo contest. Use the code MADNESS10, get 10% off any subscription. So go to NBCSportsEdge.com/premium to learn more. We'll be right back.
Welcome to NBC Sports EDGE, your one stop for everything fantasy, DFS, and more. Get up-to-date news and insights from our award-winning analysts. Looking to raise your game even more? NBC Sports EDGE Plus helps you level up with an array of premium tools and resources keeping you ahead of the pack. Learn more at NBCSportsEdge.com.
We're rolling here on brackets and bets. Now I get to bring in senior editor with PointsBet, a good friend and coworker of mine, Teddy Greenstein. Teddy, how we doing?
Great to be finally doing a show with you, Sarah. I'm awesome. Thanks.
Okay, good. Fired up. Well, a lot to talk about here on PointsBet's front, so let's just get right into it. I know you talk to a lot of the traders and you look at the numbers all day. So as of now, what are some of the biggest bets from each region we're seeing at PointsBet?
Sarah, let's start out west. We have two giants there. $10,000 on Creighton at 20-1. Exactly. Wow. A $210,000 liability for PointsBet there. Staying nearby, $2,000 at Missouri at 50-1 would win over $100,000 for the client. I think that's asking a lot from the Tigers, considering they're underdogs in the first round to Oklahoma, and then they'd likely have to beat Gonzaga. Looking out east, $2,000 on Michigan to win $14,000. I guess that client is not a big believer in Isaiah Livers, who is out indefinitely. In the South, we have a $500 bet on Winthrop at 250-1 to win over $125,000. Might I instead suggest the money line of plus 210 against Villanova if you love Winthrop. In the Midwest, we have a wager of $500 on San Diego State to win it all. That would net over $30,000. So I guess Marshall Faulk has some money to burn.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, some of those, I like the long shot odds, but I wouldn't call those necessarily liabilities for PointsBet. I'm sure the book feels pretty comfortable with the bets they took on those various teams. So where are the liabilities within PointsBet? Who are they kind of rooting against here and the people want to win?
Yeah, Sarah, that is a good distinction. So we've taken so much action on Gonzaga. About 25% of the handle is going on the Zags. 17% has been bet on Michigan. 12% on Baylor, 8% on Illinois. Now, the key with Illinois is, when did you get your bet in? If you got it preseason, if you were that smart, 60-1, you might have gotten the Illini at. Mid-season, it was more like 20-1, and now today, 7-1 or plus 700 on the Illini. Michigan also, if you were wise enough to bet on Juwan Howard's crew, 33-1 to start the season, now 7-1. Couple other notables. Gonzaga was plus 850, now about plus 250. Alabama was 110-1 to start the season, 20-1 today. Now on the flip side, the folks who got in on Villanova, Creighton, and Kansas before the season can't be too happy. They were all 14-1 to start. They're all 50-1 right now. So a better time to bet on those three schools.
Yeah, if you're a believer in Creighton and those ones you just mentioned, now would be a better time. But I'm really jealous of everyone that got in with the Illini at 60-1. Where was I with points that I missed out on that one?
Same. I'm 2 hours and 15 minutes from Champaign. Of course, my excuse is that in the state of Illinois, we cannot bet on Illinois, Loyola, Northwestern. So you got to cross that border into Indiana or Iowa or phone a friend.
Right. I hear complaint way too much from people and my friends in the Chicago region. Okay, let's move on. Which underdogs are being bet right now at PointsBet as we get ready for the tournament?
Yeah, I'd say, Sarah, Ohio is getting quite a bit of action against Virginia. Obviously, UVA has COVID issues. People are feeling strong about Ohio and its offense. So that line has shrunk from about 10 to 8.5. Winthrop, there's obviously been so much talk in this show about Winthrop, not only a strong outfit there, but going against a Villanova team. That offense has really gone cold since the Gillespie injury. So that line has shrunk a little bit, 6.5 to 5.5. And certainly some action on Georgetown. People feeling good about Patrick Ewing's crew as they cruise through the Big East there at Madison Square Garden. That line started at about 5 and now is more like 4.5.
Wow. All right, Teddy, let me ask you this. Who are you rooting for? Do you have any futures that I should look out for here?
I do. I have Alabama at 66-1. Took the Crimson Tide a while back. Absolutely. So let's go for them. And it wasn't confusion. It wasn't like I thought this was a football bet. This really was a basketball bet. And then I was able to go out of state and put some money on the Illini as well. I think I have them at 10-1.
Good for you. All right, Teddy. A lot of people with our show wanted to know paper brackets, computerized brackets, 120. How many March Madness contests are you in?
Sarah, I've come full circle on this. So in high school, I was the guy who was Xeroxing the brackets and organizing it. And then I'd be ditching school. I'd be, maybe cutting class for a couple minutes to call Sports Phone at the time and get the updated scores on Thursday and Friday. Then for a long time, I certainly went with the online brackets. And now the printed bracket is for the family bracket. And look, my daughter, Emmy, 3 years ago, she won our family bracket because she had Loyola going to the Final Four as a 6-year-old. So go, Emmy. We will do a printed family bracket this year. I'm not huge into brackets though now. I'm more into about the individual games, money lines, spreads, and futures and all that.
You got to find a spread. You got to find a spread bracket. I will say I'm wishing your daughter luck because that's epic. Way better than me a few years ago. Good job, Emmy. All right. He's Teddy Greenstein with PointsBet senior editor there. Teddy, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Hope to see you again soon.
All right, let's bring back the guys in now and kind of break down everything Teddy just said. I think what's crazy to me, and I'm also just really jealous, is the numbers people were able to get the odds rather in the future market on both Illinois and Alabama, which was incredible. But Vaughn, I'll start with you. What stood out the most? Was it the futures market and how they've adjusted lately, or the big bets they took on some very not great teams? I would make the argument for at PointsBet. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, man, there's some alumni that got some good money just to be throwing crazy amounts like that on Creighton and these other teams. But same time, I think that's bound to happen. The markets are interesting when you get them early because I know we've done a couple shows together, Sarah, and I've talked about how I had Oklahoma State early for the Final Four and Alabama early. I got those at 1,800 and 2,200. Now those are plus 400 and plus 450 on most networks. So I got those a lot early, but as Teddy said, the Villanovas and those schools, Kansas, you're not getting that value anymore. So you basically lost out the whole season watching this team to end up in a worse spot than what they started in. So really, I think for next year, people watching, when you do futures bets, don't go with the worst team like Oregon State or the Georgia Techs in the conferences, but definitely try and find those teams that you can get value on very early just to make the tournament or win their conferences, for example, because when these 3 or 4 months goes by, those lines change dramatically after every single win. So, but it's also fun to watch the lines change all the time too and see what your value's at.
Corey, anything stand out from Teddy you want to touch on real quick?
Well, the fact that Teddy used to call Sports Phone really shows a level of degen from a high schooler. That is, you know what I'm saying? That's a little bit interesting. Dialing those 800 numbers. I can't talk about Teddy because trust me, I've gotten in trouble myself. People looking at the phone bill like, what is Sports Line and why are you betting at 7 years old? But I find it interesting that bet on Missouri because Missouri is interesting. Now I understand they got the Gonzaga Bulldogs in the round of 32, so more than likely it's not going to happen. But to see that number come in on Missouri, I know Missouri is a team that some sharp people out there like, but I don't think it gets done. But other than that, I'm glad that Teddy's rebounded nicely after his Sports Phone days.
All right, Drew, I'm going to transition us here and just the impact of COVID. And it's something as a sports handicapper better and just following March Madness we think about, because you used to be able to use where are they traveling from, what do their travel days look like. They all are students, of course, so that has an effect too, focusing on school, family, friends coming, what have you. This year's different. We mentioned all the games are in the state of Indiana, so maybe some teams are, of course, closer out in the Midwest region, but let's just talk about that because I mentioned earlier, Virginia's not going to Indianapolis until Friday because most of their rosters remaining in quarantine until Thursday. And you look at Illinois, that's obviously closer. Kansas has a first round game against Eastern Washington, but they have a ton of issues. I'm looking now, and the latest update is 3 Jayhawks will not travel to the first round because of COVID. So, Drew, let me start with you. How difficult is it to navigate betting in a time of COVID-19?
It's been a challenge, but in the same sense that the uncertainty challenges your confidence in a pick, it creates opportunity as well. From what I'm hearing, the Kansas players who are going to be absent are going to be pretty significantly impacting the team and their performance. And for sure, Virginia is going to be a pretty. I think that's going to be a fairly bet against team this week because over the course of the season, we've seen teams that have not been able to practice really, really struggle in their first game back. That said, UVA is good, and Ohio, to me at least, does not match up well against them. They kind of have the blueprint of a team that does not compete well in the tournament. So I would think that you're probably going to get a discount to back a team like UVA in the first round, maybe even in the second round. And then at that point, if the market starts to catch up and said, oh man, we underrated this team, maybe you get an inflated number against a team like Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, and then you can just come and drop the hammer on the Zags. But overall, I do think that there's going to be a lot of market momentum trying to fade these teams that are having issues with either COVID or with injuries, and Virginia's at the top of that list. Now, in terms of like the situation in Indiana and the fact that these teams are, a team like Gonzaga traveling from Washington State for Indiana, going to stay there through the duration of the tournament, that can have a positive and a negative effect over the course of this tournament. And really, I think it's not going to manifest as a disadvantage to them early. And, and specifically the fact that their path is so easy, I think helps them, kind of have a soft landing here. But I do wonder if you have, a team of college kids who are kind of in a kind of a mini bubble, so to speak, and, in the hotel environment for 3 weeks, and, they're chasing immortality in terms of an undefeated national championship. And, as the field narrows down, you get to the Final Four. Does the media intensity of, the spotlight of, asking questions, can you get it done? Can you stay undefeated? Are you going to be able to do it? That sort of stuff can weigh on athletes. And we saw, there are many examples through the years where, that sort of environment has been tough for college athletes to deal with. And I will be keeping a very close eye on, the comments you're getting from the coach and the players, and as you get down into the Final Four. But it's, overall, I think, there will be surprises. You saw in the conference tournaments, teams, one player gets tagged and the team is out. And that makes this feel like a dog kind of a tournament in a sense. So, they're like, we're going on and on. Zaga's going to win. Zaga's going to win. Zaga. If they somehow get tagged and, unexpectedly, can't play in one of these round games, that the field all of a sudden is wide open. And, to that degree, it may make more sense here not to get too aggressive on laying the chalk in the overall arc of the tournament. And I'll be looking for opportunities to try to capture value in some way. If there are markets like number one seeds getting to the Final Four, there'll be some soft ways to attack the potential for surprise COVID implications as we go through this.
All right, Corey, any quick thoughts on COVID? I feel like Drew did a great job kind of breaking it down of how it will affect and could affect many teams. But we mentioned Virginia and Duke, if they got an at-large bid, would be able to play, but they're, of course, not. So your thoughts on how COVID can affect this tournament?
Oh, you mean Coach K didn't keep the team out? You mean they didn't make it? I thought he kept them out. My bad. What I'll say is this. It plays into Gonzaga's hands. I mean, Virginia and Kansas are in the region with Gonzaga. So there you go right there as far as the COVID thing. But listen, we saw Major League Baseball have issues. They got the season done. We saw the NFL have issues. They got the season done. So obviously, the NBA is having issues. They got the season done now. With the NCAA tournament, we have a shorter amount of time, and kind of, a one-game tournament makes it a little bit different. But like, you hope for the best, and you hope everybody gets it done and everybody remains safe in this time. Just an interesting tournament all around. You look at the fact that, if you're going to take off on Thursday to watch the games, you'd be like, oh my God, there's no games on. So you'd be doing fifth grade math homework on Zoom. So wait till next week to take off Thursday. But then again, the next week it goes Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So a different schedule around the tournament this year. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they did it this way. So I find it interesting, but hopefully I'm wishing for the best when it comes to the situation with COVID-19 and these college teams.
Vaughn, final thoughts on COVID and the impact?
Yeah, I mean, Drew did a great job rounding that all up, Corey as well. I think that Gonzaga just gets the benefit of the doubt here with, like you said, Kansas and Virginia dealing with those COVID issues. And I think it'll just be interesting to see how these teams match up in the second rounds after they get done with that traveling and the quarantining in their first games. I have a ton of stats on different seeding matchups for the second round, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
All right, yeah, still a lot more to come here. You're watching Brackets and Bets. We're going to talk about futures, our Final Four, who's going to win it all, some name a bet, fun prop stuff. For now, it is one of the best times in the year in the world of sports. The madness has arrived. It's also fantasy baseball drafting season. NBA, of course, is finally back after the All-Star break. Hockey's in full swing. So remember that all of our premium subscriptions get you access to our tools in every sport. So now you can get an edge on placing your college hoops bets, get drafting advice on your fantasy baseball teams, set optimal lineups, which I'm always doing in the NBA, and NHL daily fantasy contests for one low price. Use the promo code MADNESS10, 10% off any subscription. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/premium to learn more. We'll be right back.
Don't leave money on the table. No matter your sport, the Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
All right, if you've been sticking with us here on NBC Sports Edge, brackets and bets, you've probably been waiting for this along with myself. Futures. Who doesn't want to play some fun futures? There's still really good odds out there on PointsBet and across the board to take a look at who will make it to the Final Four, win it all, game-by-game basis, of course. So, Corey, let me start with you. I want to hear your Final Four, the teams you got.
All right, so here we go. Final Four going to be the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I'm going to go with the Baylor Bears. That Midwest is tough. I'll be honest. I want to pick Houston real bad, but I'm going to go with the Fighting Illini. And then you get my difference maker will be Alabama and Javon Quinterly coming out of the East region, knocking off Florida State. As far as future goes, it's like I kind of feel like I may have missed the boat on Gonzaga because right now I don't know if plus 250 is too short. I mean, obviously, it is plus 250 for a team as talented as Gonzaga, but they haven't lost the game. That could be very troublesome, but definitely I wish I was like Vaughn and got that Bama to go to the Final Four at the great odds he did. But when you look at the future, I guess, Gonzaga at 250 is like, I'll take it. It's better than being minus 250.
Okay, so we got your Final Four. Vaughn, player of the tournament.
Player of the tournament. There were so many good options. So this actually opened up on PointsBet like 20 minutes before we even got on the show. So there's a lot of good guys on here. I try to do a lot of tracking information to try and see if there's any edges we can find. So this is the only information I've pretty much found that could help. But dating back to 2006, only two big men have won Most Outstanding Player, Joakim Noah and Anthony Davis. Shout out Joakim Noah. And so basically times have changed. As we all know, it's a three-point game in basketball nowadays. Everyone shoots. It's all about guards and stretch forwards. And going back over the last 5 guys that have won this award, Kyle Guy, Dante DiVincenzo, Joel Berry, Ryan Archiacco, and Tyus Jones, So those 5 guys right there, those weren't like first-round NBA guys, big names or anything like that. I mean, Kyle Guy and Dante a little bit. But so when you're looking at Most Outstanding Player, I'm looking at second-role players, essentially. So a guy like Andre Carbello from Illinois that I just mentioned, you can get him super cheap. He's not even actually listed yet now that I look at it. So that's how crazy this is. Joel Westcamp at Iowa, example was him. Trayvon Williams of Purdue. These are the type of guys I look at. But when it comes down to who's actually going to be in the Final Four, that's what you really need here. So I like Gonzaga's team. They have a ton of guys that could win this. But I think the best value you can get here is Jalen Suggs. This guy, he's at plus 1,600. They also have Joel Ajayi at plus 2,500. These two guys are the third and fourth biggest names on the team, but they consistently get those breakout games. And I think that those two guys are great looks if you're backing Gonzaga. But if not, if you're an Illinois backer, you got to go with either Andre Carbello or Kofi Cockburn. Everyone's going to be on Ayo Dosunmu. I love him. He's a great player, but it's never the guy you think is going to win. So go with the second or third tier players on the teams. Don't go with a star, and you'll probably be better off, and you'll win a lot more money, most likely.
Okay, so Jalen Suggs, 16-1. He's averaging 14.3 points per game, projected top 5 pick, best player on the floor, of course, most times. So I love that. Okay, Drew, I'm excited to hear this. Give me your champion odds, any futures you have, who you like to win it all. Maybe it's a value play, maybe it's chalk. You tell me.
Yeah. So again, kind of the name of the game with futures, you can take one of two approaches. Some people like to look into the crystal ball and say, well, I predict them, so I'm going to go bet that. I think a better kind of, longer term approach for futures market, you want to time your entry correctly. You want to pick, a team or pick a handful of teams that you think you can capture value if chaos ensues elsewhere. Because let's take a team like I've been glowing about San Diego State. San Diego State is 66-1 right now to win the title, which is crazy. Like, they are much, much better than that. They should not be 66-1. But why are they? Well, they're going to have to do it the hard way. They have a decent matchup in the round one. I make them 66% chance to win that one, but that's a little bit, close to a coin flip. Then they go on and play West Virginia. Then they go on and play Houston. Then they go on and play Illinois. And then they go on and play potentially Baylor, and then potentially Gonzaga. Now, that is an absolute murderer's row. So if they're going to win the title, they're going to have to do it all themselves. And so, in those instances, you're going to get better value betting them game by game than you are going to be taking 66-1 now and just crossing your fingers that something magical happens. Now, when you look at the bracket and the structure overall, to me, there is a weak half and a strong half. The West and the East are much, much weaker, in my opinion, than the South and the Midwest. And so if I'm looking for value in the futures market, I'm taking someone on the weak half for sure. And I'm crossing my fingers that just chaos ensues on the other half, and that all of the good teams, just battle it to the death. And whoever emerges, bloodied and beaten into the finals from the bottom half, from the the right half of the bracket, that they're just gassed at that point, and that you can, get an advantage against them. So I'm looking pretty carefully here in the East for teams that I think have realistic chance to make the Final Four, and then just cross my fingers that it's chaos everywhere else. And now, of course, this team is going to have to beat Gonzaga once they get to the Final Four, but and that's a lot to ask. But I've got two teams circled that I think realistically can come out of that East: Connecticut at 40-1 and the Colorado Buffalo at 66-1. Both of these numbers, I make both of these numbers, in the 30 to, I make Connecticut 25, I make Colorado 30. And realistically, I think you have some decent value. And like I said, you want to attack the weaker portions of the bracket here. You don't want to go up against the big dogs and just cross your fingers. But it was 1 week ago, I would have been just glowing about the Houston Cougars because I have them so much higher rated than the market thinks. But boy, they just gave them such a tough draw. And, again, kind of going back to the concept that we were talking about with the Aztecs, like if Houston gets it done, they're going to have to do it themselves. So you're better betting them game by game than you are taking a price like 20-1. So that's kind of my overall view and vision and approach. And actually Houston's now 25-1. So, it's continuing to move out. So, that makes sense to me. And I would look for them game by game as opposed to a future.
Yeah, Drew, that's such great insight in terms of how to attack this bracket in particular, especially by the regions, as you're mentioning. Okay, this is fun. On PointsBet, basically you could name a bet, right? You could try to get a bet done through them. You reach out to them and they could put together the odds for this bet. So right now, Vaughn, name a bet for PointsBet. I need to hear it.
I want the longest buzzer beater. March is all about buzzer beaters. How far can we go? We saw Houston example. We just talked about them. They beat Memphis end of the regular season on a buzzer beater, a half court one. 47 feet, I believe, is the half of what a college basketball court is. So maybe we get something like 35, 36's range, some Steph Curry range in there. It'd be an interesting bet. But I think we'll see a couple, more than a couple buzzer beaters. But I think we're going to see one that's going to be like mind-blowing this year. 2021 expected.
Sure. Drew, name a bet.
One that I'm really excited about, and I'm trying to find the best price possible on, is will one of the first four teams make the Sweet 16? And I'm looking for a price in and around plus 300 for this. And I have, realistically, the winner of the Wichita State Drake matchup has a very real possibility to get to the Sweet 16. And then in the other 11 heads up, you have Michigan State and UCLA. Michigan State, obviously, we know how successful Tom Izzo has been in March Madness throughout history, and he gets a path potentially of BYU and Texas to get to the Sweet 16. So I think you have two very live dogs there to make a little bit of a mini run in this first week. And if you can find a price in and around plus 300 for one of the first four teams to make the Sweet 16, I'm interested in that.
Okay, Corey, PointsBet, name a bet. What are you going to reach out for them to hopefully give you the odds on so you could place it?
So the way I look at it, I want to go with the historical aspect of it. We got 9 teams from the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament this year. 2 number 1 seeds. You got about 4 teams on that top 4 line. So my bet to name the points better if they have an opportunity to make it would be would a Big Ten team, excuse me, I'm tongue tied. Will a Big Ten team make the Final Four? So I will see what points best. Give me some odds on that one right there. Okay. Then I'll just pop it into the Edge Finder tool, run the math on it, and make the bet. So there you go right there.
Okay, we've been rolling here for over an hour, but we still have one more segment to come. That, of course, our Final Four, our champion who will be cutting down the nets in April. So you want to stick around for that. Of course, thanks for watching Brackets and Bets right now. Still more to come, but even if your brackets bust, your bets don't have to. Get an edge with our premium betting tools that are packed with live odds, betting trends, predictions, player prop projections, our extensive edge finder, so much more. I said it once, I'm going to say it 100 times. Use Madness10, get 10% off any subscription. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/premium to learn more. We'll be right back with our Final Four.
Welcome to NBC Sports EDGE, your one-stop for everything fantasy, DFS, and more. Get up-to-date news and insights from our award-winning analysts. Looking to raise your game even more? NBC Sports EDGE Plus helps you level up with an array of premium tools and resources keeping you ahead of the pack. Learn more at NBCSportsEdge.com.
This has been such a fun special. We've made it this far. We got to bring it home with our Final Four. I know I'm fired up because I have so many brackets to do today and tomorrow, and I have to handwrite them to turn them into some friends, which is going to be crazy because my handwriting's such trash. We can get into that another time. Okay, let's talk about the Final Four. Corey, you touched on it before. So tell me again, your Final Four teams.
It's going to be Gonzaga, Alabama, the Baylor Bears, and the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Here goes the bracket right there. I will now take the pen, the pen right here, and I will write in GU, Gonzaga University, as my national champion for this season right here. This bracket is going into the College Basketball Hall of Fame.
I just want to go on the record and say that, doing shows from home is fun, and we can't see your paper, so you could lie about the rest of those picks and pretend later
Perfect
that you got
bracket,
them all
amazing.
Right. So you need to scan that. You need to scan that so I can actually see all the picks. Okay, Vaughn, Final Four.
All right, I'm ready to get dragged on Twitter with my Final Four.
Let's do it.
Being a sports capper, you put your picks out there. You always worry about the worst, and the worst always happens. So I got Gonzaga meeting Texas on the left side. I love this Texas Longhorns team. I think they're going to make it out. On the right side, I got Illinois making it out. I think that they're going to run into some problems with Oklahoma State and probably West Virginia. I think that's who the matchup's going to be, but I think I got them there. I want to give you guys, because this is going to be super unpopular right now. So it's Arkansas, okay? Arkansas to be in my Final Four against Illinois on the right side. This could be a bet that loses in the second round, and then I'm trashed already. That's what March Madness is. So they're a very good team. They have 4 guys that average double figures. They went on a crazy winning streak, 12 of the last 13. But I want to quickly give you guys some trends that can help you pick the second, third round matchups when you get past them. So here's just a couple I'm going to rattle off real quick before you get Drew's Final Four, which is probably going to be better than mine. So number 1 seeds versus 6 seeds have won 66 out of 72 games in the last 72. So 92% rate. 1 seed over 9 seed, take it. Number 7 seeds have won 7 of the last 12 meetings against number 2 seeds. All right, that's a very important trend there if you go. And another number 2 seed factor that I looked at, and this is why I'm fading Ohio State down here. I got Virginia Tech upsetting Ohio State, which is going to be probably a hot pick. But when it comes to teams that are number 2 seeds, teams that have lost 6 or more of their last 10 games, or 4 or more of the last 10 games, have lost in the second round 9 of the last 15 times. Ohio State did that. So I look at Ohio State to get upset early. And number 3 seeds, like I said earlier, have won 85% of the meetings with 14 seeds, but won every other year. It's been 25 of the last 35 years. It's been every other year for the past couple of years leading up to the last 3 that the 3 seeds have run this. But last 3 years, all the 3 seeds have won. It's not going to happen this year. So that's why I like Ohio there. And the last stat I got for you guys, don't go all number 1 seeds. Only 2 times since 2009 have all number 1 seeds made the Elite Eight. I don't think it's happening this year. We've already all said we're going against Michigan primarily, so you can either back us or go against in that stat. But I think those are all important trends around round 2 and beyond to make when you're filling the bracket.
Awesome. Okay, Drew, Final Four.
So the West is a bye for Gonzaga. It's crazy. I'm still just amazed at this path they gave them. The three toughest competitors in there: Virginia, Kansas, and Iowa. Well, guess what? Gonzaga played all those teams this year, and they beat the brakes off of them. And on top of that, Kansas is having issues. Iowa can't play defense. Virginia's having issues. Like, what a gift! So Gonzaga gift wrapped a path to the Final Four. If we look at the East, I think that's where chaos reigns. I'm going to take a crack at UConn as the 7th seed there. I think with them finally getting healthy, that's kind of the wild card among my Final Four teams. And then in the South, I think has set up well for Baylor. I realistically think North Texas can clear out the 4-5, do some of the dirty work for them. I think Texas Tech can clear out the 3-2 and do some of the dirty work for them. And then Baylor versus Texas Tech as a potential Elite Eight matchup is perfect for Baylor. Baylor absolutely manhandled Texas Tech the 2 times they played them this season. So Baylor gets into the Final Four from the South, and then in the Midwest again, this is like, this is the bloodbath, chalk versus chalk all over the place. I think Houston emerges. I have them numerically as the best team. And I realistically think that they can come out of here. The problem is once they get out of the Midwest, after fighting all of those hard fights, they get the pleasure of taking on the Baylor Bears, who I think get it done. And Baylor will be my champion over the Gonzaga Bulldogs.
Okay, I'm going to give my Final Four. I'm ready for the backlash, but I don't want it. I'm going Illinois. I'm taking Texas. I'm taking Purdue. They quietly finished off strong, top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency per Ken Palm. I love that. And then Gonzaga. I can't fade Gonzaga when I saw their draw of the region yesterday. It's too hard. Okay, Corey, I already know you're picking, but say it again. Who's cutting down the nets?
The Gonzaga Bulldogs will cut down the nets. They'll beat the Baylor Bears. And then one shining moment will happen, and then we'll get ready for opening day.
Okay, Drew.
Yeah, the Baylor Bears clip the Zags in the title game. The pressure is just too much for them to handle. Meanwhile, Baylor gets a nice, soft runway to get back to the form we saw from them earlier this season, where they were clearly the best team, in my opinion. I think the people are sleeping on them because they haven't looked great of late, but Baylor gets it done.
Okay, Vaughn.
I'm sorry to say this, but I had to fade Baylor. Since we talked about this before,
wow.
But last team that was undefeated going into March Madness, 1975-76, the Indiana Hoosiers. Same year, Duke and Kentucky both did not make March Madness. It happens again. Gonzaga, easiest road. Oh, it seems too good to be true. I'll believe in it. Gonzaga over Illinois in the final. Hurts me not to say Baylor, but I'm going to go with my gut and not my heart.
Yeah, we got the same finals. I'm taking Illinois. I like it. I wish I got it at 60-1. I'm going to take the Fighting Illini to win it all. Okay. Any final thoughts as we wrap it up? Anything you left out? Final bets, advice, how many brackets you're doing? Tell me now.
Hey, Sara, this is it right here. This one right here.
All right, take your fake paper.
I'm a one bracket guy. I'm a one bracket guy. I don't need 20 brackets. I am a sheet of integrity.
Yeah. The best advice I guess I can give you on brackets is something like 50% of brackets are probably going to pick Gonzaga.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a pool of like 20 or 50 of your friends, it could be even higher. There's going to be a lot of Gonzaga. And if they end up winning, the only way you're going to beat your friends who also pick Gonzaga is if you got all of the little ones right, and that's just that's a tough ask. So I think realistically, try to put a contrarian strategy together when you're filling out your bracket if you're in like a 20 to 50 person pool.
Vaughn, you got anything else besides your fading your own future from a few months ago?
Yeah, funny comedy for sure. I would say the best way to enter March Madness: expect chaos, like Drew said. Mm-hmm. And fade the public. If the public's coming in 85 or 90% on a team, don't go with that team. Take the other team to cover, spread it for the underdog, that type of stuff. The public is normally not right. And look for some value. There'll be definitely better value after the first round of games on some teams to make the Final Four and stuff. look at their angles, where the chaos can ensue, and best of luck. It's the best time of the year.
Okay, big thank you to all three analysts here for all that amazing advice. I know we all appreciate it and enjoyed it. And thank you to everyone for watching NBC Sports EDGE Brackets and Bets, the first one ever, by the way. For Drew Dinsick, Corey Parson, Vaughn, Dalzell, I'm Sara Perlman. I hope you enjoyed all of our predictions and insights for the big dance. Happy March Madness. Good luck with your brackets and bets. We'll see you next time.